Destination Draft Day. I'm Michael Rockman, and we have a wide receiver special for you today as we are going to be talking about all things wide receiver in this NFL draft class. Nick Durst, my co host, will be joining me shortly, but he is a little bit tied up with work at the moment. But, let's just dive right into it. This wide receiver class is going to be one that is talked about all the way up until that final day. Obviously, you have the big three: Jamar Chase, Jalen Waddle, and Devonta Smith. Two of those guys will probably be going in the top 10. There's potential that all three of them could. When we look at what is going to happen with the rest of this class, though, I am really interested to see what happens. Obviously, you got a guy like Rashad Bateman. That seems like a lock for the first round. But then there's a lot of speculation on what's going to happen with the other receivers in this class, such as guys like Kadarius Toney, Rondale Moore, Elijah Moore, and many others. So, with that being said, we're going to dive right into it. We got 25 wide receivers ranked today for you. We're going to be talking about all of them. So, let's dive right into it with the 25 through 16 rankings. At number 25, I got Javon McKinley, and I think he's someone that's very underrated when it comes to this draft class. He is almost the size of a tight end with how he works his frame. 6'2", 220 pounds. He is a physical catcher, but he also has some impressive speed too, so you cannot sleep on him. When you look at what he does at the point of catch, he is just spectacular. You turn on the Clemson game, and you see him bailing out Ian Book time and time again. He is absolutely a phenomenal receiver at the college level, and now he has to make that transition to the NFL level. Can he become a special threat at that next level, continue to be a dominant receiver at the point of catch? And if he does so, Javon McKinley could be a steal in this draft. At number 24, we got Tyler Vaughns, a polished wide receiver for the USC Trojans. You look at what he can do as a route runner. He's skinny, he's lanky, but he goes and makes plays. He's impressive in all things. He has reliable hands, and really in a downfield scheme like USC's offense, he was showing out a lot better than he probably was expected to from my expectations, because there's so much here that Tyler Vaughns offers as a slot receiver. To see him be able to work downfield as well as he does, especially with his athleticism maybe not being top of the line, there was absolutely a lot to like for him. And at number 24, I think, it's almost disrespectful because there's so many talented guys in this class that I have ranked in the 20s, in the 19, or in the teens, but that doesn't mean that I'm low on them. This is a very good wide receiver class. And even if you're getting a option on day 3, there's plenty of intrigue that you could potentially be pulling a huge steal in this class. At number 23, I look at Simi Fehoko, wide receiver out of Stanford. He is a big slot receiver, and I think really what entices a lot of people about his game is his combination of size and speed. He's dependable at the catch. He really works well as a run blocker. If you're looking for the teams that really love those run blocking wide receivers that maybe aren't going to address it right away, maybe someone like a San Francisco 49ers that have Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk, they could look for a guy like Simi Fehoko and really benefit from having that talent right there. At number 22, I go with Cornell Powell, wide receiver out of Clemson. He is dependable. He really showed out this year because prior to this last season, he really wasn't getting much time. He was buried in this Clemson depth chart with absolute talent at the receiver position. Injuries to guys like Justin Ross and declarations by T. Higgins really opened up the door for Cornell Powell to really step up and get his opportunity. And boy, did he run away with it. Cornell Powell is probably not going to amaze at the NFL level. But if you think about guys like James Jones, or even lower level but still talented guys like Kendrick Bourne, where they're kind of that wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4 range, but still contributing to an offense. That's what I think of for Cornell Powell. I think he has a very safe floor, and I think he's going to stick around in the league for quite some time. At number 21, we go with Cade Johnson, wide receiver out of South Dakota State. When you are looking for slot wide receivers, it is exciting to see when they are explosive, dependable at the catch, and just overall athletic. And Cade Johnson, I think, matches that description pretty well. He was able to make plays for South Dakota State all season. And really, what he brought to the table for a South Dakota State offense that was rather stagnant outside of him was impressive. I think when you turn on his tape, you can see so many great traits about him. And I think, the best part is just his release and quickness as a wide receiver. And if he can contribute that at the next level, 5'10", 186 pounds, he could be a steal of a slot as well. And I know I keep saying, this guy could be a steal, but it's really genuine because there's just so many great options in this class. And we're also bringing in our co-host, Nick Durst. Nick, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. Sorry, I'm late. Take care of some business here. You're looking at these guys here in your rankings, and nobody else is going to give you 25-man rankings than Michael. So you really all appreciate this show here. You got to think about these guys here, which is which guy can make an impact in the special teams game. Because a lot of these people, that's going to be key. Between kick returns, punt returns, and who could actually make a tackle on kickoff. Going to be very important for a good amount of guys.
Absolutely. And with that being said, we now move to number 20, Terrace Marshall, someone who I'm probably a lot lower on compared to the consensus. That doesn't mean I dislike him. I just think there are still some issues in his game. He's an athlete. He proved that at his pro day. He's a great deep threat. And I think there's plenty of potential here. 20 years old, born June 9th, 2000. So he's turning 21 in about 2 months, but still very young wide receiver with plenty to love about his game. He's got great frame. He tracks the ball pretty well. And he, like I said, he has some great speed to really work well as a deep threat. But I think my biggest issue for him right now is just getting polished in terms of breaking out of his routes a little bit better, creating a better release off the line of scrimmage. And I think combining those and putting him in a spot where maybe he's going to go in that first, second round would really open up the door for him to develop into that wide receiver. And maybe I am too low on him. Maybe I was too critical of his film, but I do think that there is a lot of work here that maybe early on in his career, he's going to have some struggles trying to find the field. At number 19, we got Amari Rogers, slot receiver out of Clemson. This guy put on a show at the Senior Bowl and really just blew everyone away with his ability to separate, his incredible footwork, and his strong route running. There's been talks about Amari Rogers as a running back because of how elusive and nimble he is. And I think we will see some snaps where he works out of the backfield. Full time, he's probably going to be a slot receiver, but he has a great frame, over 200 pounds at 5'10". And I think, in the right offense with the ability to work in that slot position, I think this could be someone that contributes for quite some time. And you look at guys last year, Joe Reed is someone that kind of is a similar profile. I don't think that Joe Reed was as good as Rodgers as a prospect, but even Reed last year was able to find ways to contribute all around the field because of his frame and really footwork ability. At number 18, we got Dwayne Eskridge, wide receiver out of Western Michigan. If you're looking for someone that's, a fun evaluation in this class, it is Eskridge because he has breakaway speed, but also he is a former cornerback and an absolute, sorry.
You're right there, Michael? Losing your voice here.
Yeah, I need my water. I forgot to grab it. He's an absolute deep threat, but also he's great on defense. He played corner leading up to it, and he was aggressive. I don't think he moved because of struggles at the cornerback position. I think he moved just because of how talented a wide receiver he is. He blew people away all offseason when they were starting to really dive into his tape. And I think Eskridge is someone that, at the very least, should be able to contribute as a special teams ace, both as a gunner and return man. At number 17, another guy that I may be a little bit lower on compared to the consensus, Dyami Brown. We talked about how Chris Sims had his rankings, and for Dyami Brown, I'm pretty sure he had him in his top 5. For me, I have him at number 17. There's plenty to like here. He stacks really well on top of corners to really create a huge advantage in the deep game, and I think he works well deep. Going against ACC corners, he was able to toast guys such as AJ Terrell and really a bunch of other people that are going to be NFL players down the line. Dyami Brown has plenty on tape to like about his game. I think if I were questioning some things, though, I didn't love his hands and ability against physical coverage. I thought that going against Melifonwu, he had some moments where he really just got overwhelmed, and that's why I'm kind of concerned about Brown compared to the rest of the crowd that really seems to love him. And at number 16, the last for this current list, Seth Williams, wide receiver out of Auburn. Look, if you turn on his highlights, you're going to absolutely fall in love with this guy. But if you turn on his lowlights, you're going to say there's no chance he lasts a day in the NFL. He's got some drop issues. He has some moments where he really gets shut down. I mean, J.C. Horn really put him to rest for the entire Auburn game, entire South Carolina game, sorry. And really, it's just kind of that question. Can he become a more consistent receiver at the next level? And if a team unlocks that, they're getting an absolute beast and a wide receiver one for their team. But if a team can't unlock that and they just continue to see those drop issues, then we could see someone kind of fall out of favor with the NFL very quickly. So Seth Williams maybe has one of the hotter seats, but I think he also has one of the higher ceilings in this class. You look at a guy like Braylon Edwards, and I think they're fairly comparable because they're both pretty impressive athletes. They have some spectacular moments catching the ball, but there are just so many drops that kind of disintegrate the overall image that is there for Seth Williams and Braylon Edwards alike. So, Nick, looking at this list, obviously we're going to show your rankings a little bit later, but who are some of your guys on this list that you're kind of, disagreeing with, or just someone you think could be a potential sleeper from this deeper group?
Come on, man. It's Dyami Brown. You'll see my list. He does crack the top 10. So that's dynamite. I just love the way these North Carolina guys are playing these under Mac Jones, Mac Brown, excuse me. So I think they're going to certainly come in the NFL ready. They're not running that traditional college system. We talked about the running backs on Monday. And I think he come in here, Brown, and I think he's going to be able to maybe not start, as the number one or two receiver, but I think he'll be in the mix, get a lot of playing time here, and it should be interesting, to see how he comes in. I do like what you said about Eskridge. The fact that he used to play cornerback is going to help him in this career as potentially a special teams guy. And we do have some questions about this list here. So not really a question here, but Twist Jelking Tutorials says Javon McKinley Hive, and then CF Thompson. So it'll be interesting to see how Tyler Vaughns translates. Feels like he can carve out an underappreciated role for a team.
Yeah, and I think looking at a lot of these guys, maybe that wide receiver 4 or 5 spot is going to be where they land maybe as their peak in their career. But there are some wide receiver 4s and 5s out there that really step up in big moments and have made a respectable name for themselves out there, that even though they may not get the opportunity to really take over as a team's number one wide receiver or anything, they could still very well be a notable name in the NFL. And really, if they can create a career that's 5 years plus, that's still pretty successful by NFL standards.
The most successful wide receiver 5 in NFL history has to be David Tyree, multi-time Pro Bowler on special teams, and of course, the catch of all catches in the Super Bowl.
I've completely blocked out that guy from my memory. No idea who that is, Nick. I can't even talk about it. Moving on. But we are actually going to move on. We're going to talk about 15 through 6. At number 15, we got Nico Collins, a wide receiver out of Michigan. Look, I don't want to drag anyone's name through the mud here, but turning on his tape was painful to watch because it really required me to have to watch Shea Patterson again. And there was just so many inaccuracies in his game. But Nico Collins, in terms of what he showed himself, was absolutely intriguing. He's a deep threat, big size wide receiver, 6'4", really in a class that lacks the overall size and deep threat ability. I think Nico Collins is someone that really could be a day 2 steal for a team, because you're looking at what this guy has in terms of potential. He opted out of this past season, so we didn't get to see him really take that next step. But I think that could create some intrigue for a lot of teams, because there's just so much here to unpack, and really an offense that maybe works a little bit more downfield, that is a little bit more efficient than Michigan's 2019 offense. I think you're looking at a wide receiver that really tears up the college football level. So if he can land with an NFL team that really develops him, works with him, and takes advantage of his nice instincts and after catch ability, even for his size, I think you're looking at a guy that could be an absolutely great pickup on day 2. Really someone that comes to mind when I think about Nico Collins has to be someone like Courtland Sutton. Maybe not the best athlete, and still pretty impressive, though, when it comes to how well they move around the field. Nico Collins at number 15, but I'm telling you, don't sleep on the guy. At number 14, I got Jalen Darden. Maybe a little bit of mean green bias in me, but I'm a huge fan. Probably one of the smartest runners in the class. Now, what that means is you get the ball in his hands, and after the catch, he's absolutely phenomenal. You give him any space, and it seems like he's making plays. If you're looking for someone maybe not to critically watch, but just to sit back and enjoy, turn on Jalen Darden's tape. He is absolutely fun to watch and just one of the most exciting players in this class. Even if the overall peak isn't going to be up there with the, Nico Collins or maybe even a Rashad Bateman, I think he's still a lot out of that slot type player. And really, he could be a toolsy type player where you're getting him on jet sweeps, getting him the balls in screen situations, and letting him create after the catch. And Jalen Darden is going to do that. At number 13, Josh Imatorbhebhe, a wide receiver out of Illinois that, again, I don't want to drag anyone through the mud, but watching his tape, it was more frustrating to see Brandon Peters kind of miss some throws and really not give him the opportunity to succeed like he really created for himself. He creates separation extremely well, but also his athleticism has to be talked about. You're never going to have a conversation about Josh Imatorbhebhe without mentioning the insane vertical and the insane testing that he brings to the table. If you're looking for a wide receiver that really could be a day 3 pick, but a potential steal, Imatorbhebhe is someone that I am absolutely focused in on. And Nick, we're talking wide receivers. The Patriots have just cut Julian Edelman in a surprise move.
Wow.
Obviously, I think the big thing is if he's going to play, both of us are probably thinking Tampa, no question about it. But there is much of a career left for Julian Edelman in the NFL, or do you think that this is it?
Oh, he's going to be in Tampa, obviously. This is nuts. What are they thinking here? I mean, they could have at least traded him for something, right?
Wow. Well, apparently he failed his physical, so that was why they cut him.
Wow.
So I don't know if he just didn't pass his medicals or what happened, but
that's a good way out of contracts to save some money. So how do you feel about that as a Patriots fan?
I think it sucks because Edelman is obviously one of the well-known people of our era of dominance, especially the end of Patriots era was all about Edelman and Brady, and that was like the big dynamic duo once Gronk left. And it definitely isn't fun to see, these great players kind of have their career sort of fall apart due to injuries. Edelman, though, created a career for himself and has so much to show for it. Even if this is the end of Julian Edelman's playing career, it was definitely a fun ride.
Well, if Edelman goes to the Bucs, what does this mean for Antonio Brown? Is his playing career over?
Yeah, I think the big question is, if he does go to the Bucs, there's just so many mouths to feed in that room. Yeah, they could kind of bring in Edelman, but can they really fit Antonio Brown in there? And maybe Antonio Brown has to find another team. Maybe Arian said this is 1 year and that's it. And it could be potentially something like that, but it's really going to come down to what Brady kind of prefers. Obviously, he's great friends with both Julian Edelman and Antonio Brown, so I'd assume he kind of gets to say on whether he wants one or the other. Maybe we'll see Scotty Miller get traded away, and
I think he's going to want Brown over Edelman. As tough as that is to say.
Yeah,
because Brown is definitely more talented at this point than Edelman. But you saw what happened in the Super Bowl last year. Who made the big impact? Rob Gronkowski. So I don't care what Edelman would do in the regular season. And by the way, he'd be great returning kicks and punts. Come the postseason, if he has Edelman and Gronkowski, how do you not pick the Bucs to go back to the Super Bowl?
Yeah, I think they're definitely going to be a betting favorite regardless of what seed they end up with, assuming they do make it. I don't want to put any jinxes out there, but assuming they're there, I think even if they're sitting in that 7 or 6 spot, a lot of teams a lot of bettors are going to be looking for the Bucs to repeat.
Yeah, I think the Bucs, with the way everything is set up right now, with the fact that the Saints are probably going to take a step back, I think the Bucs have a good shot at the 1 seed this year. I mean, the Packers are going to be incredible again. My phone's blowing up here with this Edelman stuff, but because last year was built for a year for a low seed to win because there was no home field advantage. This year, you would think there would be. It's just so tough to get back to the Super Bowl. Ask Tom Brady that, but Yeah, I mean, just looking at things from this is crazy. We're talking pre-draft here, but the only thing the Bucks are going to do is get better in the draft because they literally brought back every single starter, which is unheard of for a Super Bowl team. Every starter is back, so whoever they draft is just going to be a bonus addition. And Edelman's not like this huge game breaker at this point in his career, but he is perfect for the postseason.
Absolutely. And you talk about the Bucks retaining all their starters. It's not like they had really any poor starters either. Some of the question marks on their team really stepped up and took that next play or next level to really stick around as a very solid starter. Maybe they could get a interior offensive lineman to add some talent there. But even Alex Kappa, who may be the weak spot on that line, is still a serviceable starter at the very least. So there's plenty of talent on this Bucks team, and wherever they go in this draft is going to be, really just depth, and hopefully they can become a starter. But there's no rush for them to do so.
You think there's any chance the Bucks take a quarterback?
I wouldn't think so, just because I think Brady probably voiced very heavily like the biggest issue he had in New England was that they didn't invest in him and really try to take advantage of his window while he was there. And and I would assume that the Bucks are going to be able to kind of say, okay, look, we aren't gonna draft your replacement, at least not early on, because we want to continue to get you the best assets that we can. So, there's definitely a chance that maybe someone falls or someone that they really love, they kind of make a move for. But I think in that first round, they're probably going to try to add just best player available, or maybe just add some depth at a position that is already pretty strong.
I think, maybe if Kyle Trask fell to, late third round, they would consider it perhaps.
And there's certainly that possibility. But we do got to get back to these wide receiver rankings. So at number 12, Tamorrion Terry out of Florida State, a really impressive wide receiver when you turn on the tape. Someone that maybe had a little bit of a down year compared to his prior seasons, but really there's so much here that you can really be intrigued by based on what you see on the tape. He's an athlete, stands 6'4", 209 pounds, great size speed combination, but also he is able to work over the middle and show great physicality. And he's got great yards after catch ability as well. Really putting all those things together, there's just so much to be intrigued by. If I were to say some question marks about his game, it'd probably just be, I think that he still needs to grow in terms of his natural football instincts. He is someone that has plenty of great moments, but he has too many drops. He has too many times where he kind of just sticks to his route. And if the play breaks to the right and he has a hitch on the left, he needs to start breaking over to the right with his QB. And at the moment, that just doesn't happen. It could be a scheme thing. It could be the coaches wanted him to do that. But based on what I could tell, I just felt like there was too many issues in that regard. At number 11, Tylan Wallace, wide receiver out of Oklahoma State, a guy that really is just a contested catch maniac. At the NFL level, though, he's not going to be able to be this jump ball wide receiver. He's 5'11", and he's 194 pounds. He can do it. He'll have moments where he continues to do it, but you cannot depend on him to be a successful NFL wide receiver if all you're doing is just trying to throw the ball up to him. But what he does well is he has great movement ability. I really was impressed with his ability when he's working in that short to intermediate range as a receiver. I think he adjusts for catches well, showing off great flexibility and athleticism, and really being able to adjust for the catch, even when it's not up in the air, but outside of his frame, I think was absolutely phenomenal. And he's just a smooth mover. I think, there's issues in terms of can he continue to separate as a consistent route runner rather than just trying to work deep and catch a contested ball? Can he really expand his route tree at the NFL level? If he can do that stuff, if he can continue to improve in that regard, I think Tylan Wallace could be a very good receiver. And right now, this ranking is very projection heavy because, like I said, at Oklahoma State, he was just dependent on to be this contested catch guy. But we'll see what happens as he develops and grows his game. At number 10, I have Amon-Ra St. Brown, wide receiver out of USC. Really a super dependable wide receiver. He's aggressive at the point of catch. A lot of people have been talking about the Ravens need to go first round wide receiver. I really want to see them pick up Amon-Ra St. Brown in that second, third round because I think he really fits their scheme very well. And I think he separates well enough to really add to that wide receiver room. He's someone that can play the slot or outside. He's got that versatility, and I think that's a huge bonus for him. But also, he's got some great physicality when it comes to it. I think in terms of playing the ball, boxing out the defender, and really getting himself positioned to where only he can bring it in. There's only a few guys that are better than him at that in this class, and he does it extremely well. Get him in a spot where you really let him work, over the middle, on the outside, rotate him all around, and I think he's going to contribute in some special ways. At number 9, I have Austin Watkins, and this is disappointing for me because I had him at number 4 prior to his pro day, and then he absolutely just put up poor numbers. His RAS was in the 1 range, I believe, so it's quite disappointing. There's still a lot on tape that I like about his game. He tracks the ball extremely well. He's patient. He makes things happen to where they're still in stride. He moves pretty well on tape. The athleticism is a huge concern. He needs to be better in terms of what we see on the film. That needs to be consistent and continue to work at the NFL. But also, there's just a lot of development that needs to happen as well for Watkins. He was used as this deep threat wide receiver. He was used as this stupendous athlete at the Conference USA level, which, not to diss the Conference USA, but I think he got away with a lot. He was used in ways that maybe won't be as successful at the NFL level. But if he can continue to grow his game, I still think Austin Watkins offers plenty of upside and plenty of potential for the NFL level. And hopefully, it doesn't make me look like a fool for this ranking. At number 8, I got Ihmir Smith-Marsette, one of my favorite underrated wide receivers in this class out of Iowa. He reminds me so much of Emmanuel Sanders. And I think the capability to play inside, outside, like we talked about with Amon-Ra St. Brown, is similar for Ihmir Smith-Marsette. He's got great speed. He can be a deep threat if you need him to. He stands 6'1", 181 pounds. You may want to see him add a little bit of weight, but I think that will come. There's definitely some play strength issues, but I really love the overall ability that he shows. His final season at Iowa, there were definitely some question marks in terms of production. Really, one game kind of saved the season from looking like a huge disappointment. He put up 25 catches, but 7 of those catches came in his final game. So, there's question marks. There's issues that happen in terms of production, but I think on tape and what he does, there's plenty to love about Ihmir Smith-Marsette. And if you're looking for a guy round 3, round 4, I think Smith-Marsette is an absolute great pickup and great value in that range. At wide receiver 7, I got Rondale Moore out of Purdue. I think there's just so much here in terms of playmaking, in terms of just overall athleticism that is going to make him work at the NFL level. Obviously, when you talk about Rondale Moore, you can't do so without talking about his frame and just the question mark about a guy that small. Can he really produce to a level that high? Personally, I think he can. And there's just so much on tape that can make him work as a deep threat, as a gadget player, working over the middle even. He's aggressive enough to make plays on the catch. He's got to improve his consistency. He's got to obviously answer some durability concerns. But Rondale Moore is my wide receiver 7 for a reason. I understand the height concerns. I understand the frame concerns. I understand the injury concerns. But assuming he stays healthy, Rondale Moore should be a star at the next level. At number 6, Rashad Bateman out of Minnesota, a first-round wide receiver, very likely going to be happening. Great size, great frame. He can play the outside. My biggest question mark for him is, can he develop in terms of working against man coverage? Too often, his film was just really getting open in soft spots of zone coverage. I think there's kind of similarities between him and DJ Moore in that regard. If he can contribute and beat man coverage more consistently, then he is going to be a stud at the NFL level. But right now, I think there's still a lot to work on. And we got some questions from the comment section. I know you don't have him listed in your top 25, but do you have any thoughts on Missouri's wide receiver, Damon Hazleton? Might not be that dynamic profile teams are after, but tidy route runner and consistent in contested situations. Yeah, so Hazleton was someone that I was actually really high on when he was back at Virginia Tech, and he was someone that I thought was impressive in terms of just really ability to adjust for catches, the ability to make plays on the ball, and I thought he moved pretty well for his size as well. In terms of where I think he goes, I think this is someone that will probably be undrafted. I think that it's someone that, the concerns about the transfers, as weird as it is, it's definitely a real part of the process if they consistently are moving teams. And I think there's still some question marks about his overall athleticism, kind of like what you talked about. But I do think that he has some impressive moments to where Damon Hazleton could be a UDFA pickup, but be someone that sticks around on teams for quite some time. List of Pro Bowl wide receivers with an RAS worse than Austin Watkins. Jarvis Landry, Terrence Mathis, that's it. Yeah, no, I understand that the odds are against him after this RAS testing, but I still like this film enough to really put my bets on him. And another thing on the Julian Edelman situation, he is expected to retire according to ESPN. So likely the end of the career. Nick, it's been one that has been debated a little bit. Do you think Julian Edelman has a case for the Hall of Fame because of his postseason success?
It's unlikely. Usually comes down to either you're a quarterback or you've been an all-pro. And he's not either of those, unfortunately. So I don't think he's going to be a Hall of Famer. What do you think?
Yeah, honestly, I probably don't think he will, but there is a lot of Super Bowl success in his fortunes, playoff success, playoff stats that are going to be on his resume, but ultimately I think they'll probably pass on him, at least for a while. Maybe down the road, they may find a way to slip him in.
Yeah, well, say, maybe the Patriots are in the market now to draft a receiver at some point. Now let's talk about your buddy here at number 14. Do you know him personally? You went to school with him. And how many of his games did you see?
So I don't know him personally, but I'm sure I crossed paths with him on campus or something a few times. In terms of personal experience going to the games, I was skipping a lot of the North Texas games. So I was late watching Jalen Darden. The issue is I didn't want to sit at a football game when I could watch, 3 or 4 at home, especially when it was, UNT versus like Rice compared to LSU versus Alabama and stuff like that. So I was consistently staying home from the North Texas football games and watching the bigger schools play on TV. So I was late to get around on Jalen Darden, and once I turned on the tape, I was regretting missing all the games. I felt like I probably should have attended at least one.
Oh, so you never attended one University of
I
Texas?
attend just that last year. I didn't attend any. I was like, all right, I've been to a few, like I probably like 5 overall throughout my whole 4 years, but that
How
last
is
year, my senior year, just skipped them all. What's up?
how is the team in your 4-year span at college? Were they any good?
So the year that I came in, they were coming off this horrendous season, like 1-11, lost to an FCS team at homecoming. Their coach got fired that day. They brought in Coach Luttrell. They turned that 1-11 season to 5-6 or something, or 5-7 maybe. Made a bowl game. They got blown out, but it happened. Then that next season, they took a huge step. Went like I think 8-4 or something. So a lot of people are saying this year 3 they're going to be huge. They went like 8-4 again, and then the next year they went down to like 6-6, 5-7. So it was a little disappointing because there was huge expectations that they were gonna turn into this like mid-major powerhouse, which I mean happens sometimes, but I think a lot of people had higher expectations for the overall peak of Luttrell, and assuming they can recover, Luttrell does seem to be a very talented coach. He got some Big 12 interest. And, in time, if he can rebuild that team again, I think he could be a guy we're talking about for some of these Power 5 positions at head coach that could be opening in the coming years.
Yeah. How about Austin Watkins going to UAB? Wasn't it just like 6 years ago that UAB canceled their football program and then they
Yeah,
turned around and Lane Kiffin's there and he's rebounded. So definitely a very talented person there. Sometimes you got to overlook where these people go to school. It doesn't really make the hugest difference at a lot of positions.
absolutely. Austin Watkins, Spencer Brown, they terrorized North Texas early on in the Conference USA, movement that they had, and they won the conference, I think, fairly early in both their careers. And then, also there's plenty of defensive talent on this team as well. The UAB team really impressive how quickly they turn things around, and they've been pretty consistent as well. But now we move on from the 15 through 6 spots and we talk about the top 5 wide receivers for me in this class. And at number 5, we got Kadarius Toney, a wide receiver that maybe has some of the most question marks because he really kind of blew up this year. But I think in terms of, what he offers, there's just so much to love about this guy. He has great wide receiver abilities in terms of separation, yards after catch, and ball adjustment. He makes plays on the ball. I think he has pretty solid hands, actually. And from what I saw, I think that there's definitely some unpolished parts to his game. There's question marks about how he will be able to develop and get open when he's not able to just kind of out juke everyone. But I do think that as he grows in the NFL, he's going to find a way to really be a consistent contributor. I really would love to see this guy on the 49ers or the Jets working with a Shanahan or, anyone else that's kind of in that system where they allow him to be this yards after catch receiver and really turn him into a special weapon. Still, regardless of where he lands, I really love Kadarius Toney's game, and I think there's plenty to be intrigued by. 70 catches over the year, 984 yards, 10 touchdowns, and 23.1% yardage share is very impressive when you have a man named Kyle Pitts in that receiving room as well. There's just so many weapons, and he was still able to be a huge contributor. I am all in on Toney, and I think he's going to be able to really produce at that next level. And we have a question. Do you not worry about his contested catch ability with Toney? I do think that there is some concerns in that regard. Uh, you know, in terms of just being more consistent as a overall receiver rather than just kind of a gadget player. There's question marks, but I do think that working with him and continuing to develop what he already has in his skill set, you can be able to develop that. And I think he creates enough separation to where it's not as big of an issue. For wide receiver 4, I have Elijah Moore, wide receiver out of Ole Miss, 5'9", 178 pounds, 21 years old, 86 catches over the year, 1,193 yards, 8 touchdowns. If you're reading that yardage share, yeah, that is correct. 41.8% of his team's passing yards, an absolute dominant player at the college level. And I think he will continue to find that dominance at the next level as well. He's great with contested catches, but he's also able to get open and find separation. He works well deep. He works well in the short to intermediate game. And I think he's really impressive with the ball in his hands as well. He has some issues in terms of getting open against physical coverage. That can slow him down a little bit. That frame obviously needs to be expanded on, but there is issues about, is he going to be limited to the slot position? I think it could potentially be an issue, but I think he works well deep to where he could potentially be an outside deep threat type guy as well. I compared him to Brandon Cooks, who really has turned into a deep threat at the NFL level, but at the college level in Oregon State, he was kind of used in very similar ways. And really, Elijah Moore is probably going to be a round 2, round 3 type wide receiver, but I think he's going to stick around as one of the best slot receivers in the NFL for quite some time. I'm extremely high on Elijah Moore, and I think he gets overlooked when talking about some of the top wide receivers in this class because of that frame. But trust me, I think he is going to be an absolute beast regardless of what height he comes in at. For wide receiver 3, we're talking about the big 3, and the first one to be listed is Devonta Smith, wide receiver out of Alabama, 6 foot, 170 pounds, 22 years old. Sorry for the 23 on the graphic here. 117 catches, 1,856 yards, 23 touchdowns, 39.9% yardage share, about 80% catch percentage when targeted. He is absolutely dominant. He has incredible release and route running ability. He can make plays with balls in his hand. He has insane acceleration. Once he gets going, he is hard to slow down. He turns upfield in a hurry, and he is just absolutely dominant in that regard. And also, he works his way into open spots incredibly well, demonstrating excellent field awareness. He's casual when bringing in contested catches. He just seems to do it all with ease. And at the NFL level, I continue to expect that because he is just not shown otherwise. There's question marks about his frame. At 170 pounds, can he really be that dominant receiver at the next level? I think so, though. Lanky or not, I think he's still going to find ways to succeed. You look at guys, and I'm not saying this is the comparison, But a guy like Robbie Anderson, who's lanky as well, maybe not the strongest out there, but he's able to find ways to succeed. I think there were some drops on his tape that weren't really talked about enough, and there's going to be some issues in that regard. I still love his tape. I still love his hands. I still love his receiving ability, but there are some drops on tape that happen that kind of concern me. And I think his blocking is definitely something that could, lower his view for some teams. We were talking about earlier Amon-Ra St. Brown, a physical receiver who can kind of block like that, or Simi Fehoko, sorry. And, maybe a team like the Ravens or a team like the 49ers aren't going to be as high on a Devonta Smith as some of these other teams that kind of want their wide receivers to really just be more about finesse and getting open in the wide receiver game. So, there's schemes that maybe he wouldn't be as valued in, but I still think overall he could play anywhere and find ways to succeed. And we have a comment from the comment section drops. PFF has Devonta Smith with only 3 drops this year. That's great for PFF. I'm not trying to diss them, but their stats can be a little inconsistent at times, in my opinion. So, I saw more than 3. For my grade, I gave him B1, and I think that there is plenty of potential here. I think there will be a little bit of delay in terms of getting started. Maybe not going to be the high level contributor that a lot of people want him to be. But I do think that with time, with development, he is going to be an extremely polished wide receiver with absolutely dominant play. I compared him to Marvin Harrison. That's a very lofty comparison. I'm well aware. But I do think that with the right opportunity, Devonta Smith could be special. And the fact that he's wide receiver 3 just tells you how special the top of this class is. And at wide receiver 2, we have Ja'Marr Chase, 84 catches, 1,780 yards, 20 touchdowns in his 2019 season. Obviously opted out of this last year. Sorry for the numbers at the top right. Those are inaccurate. I didn't put it in his actual frame. My apologies for that. He's about 6'2", 207 pounds, I believe, is the direct frame for him. But there's definitely a lot to love. Or 6 foot, 207 pounds is the official measurements. So 29.5% yardage share, sharing a receiver room with guys like Justin Jefferson, with guys like Terrace Marshall, with guys like Thaddeus Moss. These are his 2019 stats. So he was dominating in a room that was filled with dominant NFL players. Justin Jefferson obviously just set the league on fire as a rookie wide receiver, and Ja'Marr Chase was the better wide receiver during that time. And that tells you plenty that you need to know. He's a physical receiver. He boxes out anyone. He makes plays on the ball, and he's just absolutely dominant in terms of just creating an opportunity for himself, working back to passes. He plays the ball extremely well, but he's also aggressive. You cannot press this guy and do it well. I do think that there's question marks in terms of he kind of sticks on press coverage. I think he sometimes loves the fighting of it. So he's just like, okay, let's keep going at it instead of just going into his route. And I think that's something that, should be an easy fix, but I do think it's something that needs to happen. And I love his breaking ability. Once he gets into that break, once he drops his hips, he blows out of his routes and really creates so much separation. There's footwork issues. There's some times where he maybe gets away with how well he plays strength-wise that may not happen at the NFL level. But I do think that Ja'Marr Chase is going to be a star on day one, and that's why I have an A1 grade for him. I think day one, he's going to be a high contributor to wherever he lands, and he's going to continue to develop and become a superstar at the wide receiver level. In the NFL, I have him compared to a guy like Hines Ward. And again, another lofty comparison, probably one of the most underrated of the last, of the 2000s. But Hines Ward was an aggressive wide receiver, great run blocker, great physical guy that really made plays on the ball. And I think Ja'Marr Chase, probably a better athlete, but could be very similar in terms of that production and notoriety in his career. Ja'Marr Chase, wide receiver 2, but still extremely high expectations for him. And at wide receiver 1, even with a little bit lower of a grade, Jalen Waddle, I have him as a B1. The reason that I decided to opt for Jalen Waddle as wide receiver 1 is because while I think he's maybe a little bit slower out of the gates, I think that ceiling for his development and peak play is going to be higher. You look at his frame, 5'9", 180 pounds, 22 years old. In this past season, he didn't play a lot of games, 28 catches, 591 yards, and 4 touchdowns. He was extremely consistent at the catch point. He played balls like he was 6'5". Despite being 5'9", he was able to go up and get over anyone. He has extremely deadly speed, and his release is incredible. There's injury history question marks. There's catch radius question marks. And, the production, while obviously, he was injured this year or else he would have completely blown out any production concerns, he was not the wide receiver one in terms of his past seasons. He never put up those huge, gaudy numbers. And so there's some reasons to doubt him in terms of analytically viewing at his report. But I think on tape, there's just so much to love about what he can do. I gave him the Tyreek Hill comparison. I know it's kind of gotten to be cliche to toss out Tyreek Hill, but I don't think there's anyone that's as dominant in terms of getting up and going and getting balls as well as Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle do. And that's why he's put in a class of his own in terms of that speedster type wide receiver. Jalen Waddle, day one wide receiver, probably top 15 pick, and look for him to be an absolute star. But really, all 25 guys that we talked about today and plenty more have potential to really make an impact in this league. This wide receiver class is very impressive. Nick, your thoughts on the wide receiver class and just overall how much we could be talking about this class years down the line?
I'm not sure, Michael. I think there's a lot of red flags, maybe yellow flags here when it comes to a lot of these guys with their injury histories. We ultimately don't know the long-term impact of missing a full season for people who opted out or a shortened season. And building up that cardio and stamina is going to be huge, especially now it's 17 games. So I think it might be a bit of an adjustment period here, not just for the receiver position, but really everybody coming into the NFL next year, just due to the fact that we have extra games. So I'm going to be interested to see there. And when we look at our side-by-side top 10 rankings, I'm sure there's going to be some eyebrows raised at my rankings as usual. But I could certainly, give you the reason why I have certain people higher than others or lower than others.
Well, let's pull it up. And as you can see, Nick Durst has Ja'Marr Chase at 1, Rashad Bateman at 2, Tylan Wallace at 3, Devonta Smith and Jalen Waddle at 4 and 5, respectively. Number 6, Rondale Moore. Number 7, Elijah Moore. Number 8, Terrace Marshall Jr. Number 9, Kadarius Toney. And number 10, De'Ami Brown. Nick, I'm sure the big question mark for everyone, why are you a little bit lower on the Alabama receivers than most?
Yeah, I think I'm very concerned about Waddle's injury history here. So I think maybe wide receiver more than any position is the hardest to come back to because you need that explosiveness. So I'm a little wait and see here on Waddle. And for me, if the guy's winning the Heisman, I got to put him ahead of his teammate here. So that's why I have Smith in front of Waddle. Smith, though, obviously looked great, right, last year. I wonder how his slender build is going to hold up in the NFL. So that's, from where I am. And maybe I'm just a little too high on, Bateman here. But, I thought, 2 years ago when Minnesota was undefeated for a while, it was really him carrying the offense. And I think he's going to have a good career here. Wallace, he doesn't make your top 10, but I don't know. I just feel like the Big 12 receivers sometimes get very underrated because sometimes people say, well, it's Big 12, they're passing a lot. But I think in a receiver sense, that actually should help their rankings because they're getting so many targets throughout. I see we do have a comment. Somebody likes that I have Tylan at number 3. I'm surprised. But that's my top 5 there. And then 6 through 10, Rondale Moore, pretty high on him. Elijah Moore, I think he's good as well. Terrace Marshall Jr. Doesn't get as much love because of Ja'Marr Chase. Toney had a great season, and we mentioned Brown earlier as well. So I like to go the controversial route here a lot when I do my rankings. So
I get it, and I think one guy that probably both of us don't have that a lot of people consistently have in their top 10 is Nico Collins, like we talked about out of Michigan. Have you been able to watch his tape much, and do you have any thoughts on him, or have you not really checked him out as much?
It's just it's unfortunate because a lot of these Michigan guys got a bad taste in the mouths because the way things happened last season. But he's very talented. Not really sure where he's going to be going to the draft though. Rick actually likes Bateman more than the Bama receivers too. Wow. So I guess I wasn't as controversial here as when I did my quarterback rankings for you and Chris Landry.
Gotta improve the controversy here. We're trying to get clicks and people angry in the comment section. Can't have all this positivity here. Anyway, though, I think the biggest difference between us is just, your overall value maybe of Terrace Marshall and De'Ami Brown compared to where I have them ranked. But I think really it's a demonstration of how good this wide receiver class is for me, because there's so many guys in this class that really the rankings could move all around in terms of where these guys have them. Somewhere from that, 4 to 25 range could really be shuffled, and I wouldn't hate a lot of the rankings. So, this wide receiver class has plenty of potential. If you are a team that is in need of a wide receiver, I consistently urge you that this year is the year to dive deep and kind of look at all the options, because you'll probably find someone that is projected to be like a day 3, day 2 type pick that you love, maybe even more than some of these day 1 wide receivers that are currently being hyped. And, even some guys that we didn't talk about are going to be intriguing at the next level. Some of the guys that I would like to give a shout out to are guys like Daz Newsome out of North Carolina, Tutu Atwell out of Louisville, Anthony Schwartz, one of the fastest guys in college football last year out of Auburn, Shee Smith out of South Carolina, Marquez Stevenson out of Houston. Both these guys probably slot guys, but there's plenty of potential. Shee Smith obviously dominated the college football level in terms of production. Another guy that I really like is DeMonte Coxey, or DeMonte Coxey, I think was how they pronounced it actually. So a little bit points off for the weird pronunciation of the last name compared to what I expected, but that's fine. Brennan Eagles out of Texas is someone that's had a lot of hype, great size, great speed. And then there's some other guys, Josh Palmer, Osiris Mitchell, Des Fitzpatrick, Frank Darby, Trayvon Grimes, Sage Surratt, Dax Milne. There's plenty of guys. And Jalen Camp out of Georgia Tech. There's plenty of options out there. If you are looking for a wide receiver, this is a great class to find options that you will probably enjoy. I'm not saying that your team's necessarily going to draft them, and I'm not saying that all of them are going to be studs, but there's definitely plenty of potential in this class to at least find someone that really fits what you are looking for in a wide receiver.
No doubt about it, Michael, and very in-depth there, 25-person ranking. So a rarity in the scouting world, but you worked that well, and we had you here, your different background today, and the Wi-Fi worked on your end, so it's another great show in the books.
I appreciate it, and we appreciate everyone in the comment section and LandryFootball.com for the platform to stream about the NFL draft. We'll see you guys on Friday when we're talking about tight ends and offensive line. Take care. Have a good week, everyone. We'll see you then.